The wind tore across the cliffside like it had a personal vendetta, carrying with it the sharp tang of ozone and the faint, almost imperceptible hum of distant machinery buried somewhere in the rocky landscape. He tried to rise, but his body protested, each muscle screaming betrayal, and his vision wavered between reality and something hazier, a dreamlike blur tinged with silver and green. The sky above swirled in unnatural patterns, as though someone had taken the usual twilight and run it through a kaleidoscope. He thought he was hallucinating, which would have been a perfectly reasonable assumption, except for the way the rocks beneath him pulsed slightly, as if alive. Great, he muttered to no one in particular, dying alone with sentient geology. Could this get any worse? That's when she appeared. Lysara. At least, that's the name he would later learn she answered to, though at first he didn't have the mental capacity for names. He barely had the capacity to breathe without it feeling like inhaling fire. She emerged from the shifting air like a blade of moonlight, her long ears angled slightly back, catching the starlight and giving her an ethereal halo. She looked human enough that he nearly laughed through his pain, a reflexive attempt to anchor himself, until he realized that her silver eyes were fixed on him with unnerving intensity. "Don't die. Not yet," she said, her voice melodic, like wind chimes tangled in a storm. He squinted at her and rasped, "I was kind of counting on it," before coughing and regretting it immediately. She crouched beside him with a grace that defied gravity, and he noticed that the air around her seemed charged, tiny sparks dancing across her fingertips, as if the universe itself were acknowledging her presence. "Humor is dangerous," she said, half teasing, half warning, and he tried again. "Well, it's either laugh or cry, and crying isn't really my style." The corner of her mouth quirked in a way that might have been a smile or a prelude to something far worse. When she leaned closer, he could see the faint glint of her fangs. Not menacing, not yet. More like a promise that the world had rules he hadn't read yet. "You are on the edge, human," she said, tilting her head slightly, her long ears twitching like radar dishes. "Your heart is weak, your blood interesting." He attempted a weak joke. "Do you serve decaf versions of whatever you're about to do?" She hummed, a sound that made his chest tighten in a confusing mix of fear and fascination, and then she pressed her lips to his wrist. The world changed. Pain vanished as if it had never existed. Colors exploded in impossible combinations, his body vibrating with energy he didn't know he could feel. He tried to speak, to make a joke about feeling like he'd been hit by a meteor shower of vitality, but the words tangled on his tongue. His senses reeled. The smell of metal and ozone sharpened. The faint hum of some distant alien engines became a conversation he almost understood. Even the breeze against his skin carried whispers of distant worlds. When he finally managed a breath, it came out shaky, uneven, and he realized he could feel her presence in the molecules around him, like she had folded herself into the air itself. I can't, what just happened?" He stammered. She pulled back, her long ears flicking in amusement, and tilted her head. "You are no longer merely human," she said, almost as if reciting a recipe. "You are bound to me. To my blood, to a path dangerous and infinite." He groaned, still reeling, and whispered, "Infinite. Fantastic. I never liked finite deadlines anyway." She tilted her head again, eyes glinting, and he caught the faintest trace of laughter, or was it hunger? In her gaze. "Do not underestimate me, human," she said softly, "or yourself." Despite the storm still roaring around them, he couldn't help but notice small, absurd details. The way her fingers left tiny trails of light in the air, the rhythm of her breath oddly synchronized with the flickering of distant neon signs buried in the cliffs, the way her presence made his heart race without actually being alive in the conventional sense. "Okay," he muttered, trying to sound braver than he felt, "so apparently I'm immortal now. Cool. Does this come with a user manual?" Lysara's eyes sparkled with a kind of alien amusement, and she leaned back slightly, letting her long ears twitch. "No manual," she said, "but there is guidance if you survive the initiation." He tried a weak chuckle and failed, nearly coughing on the residual adrenaline still coursing through his veins. Survive initiation. Right. Fantastic. And here I thought my biggest problem today was running out of snacks. Then the wind shifted again, carrying with it the faint hum of engines and the shimmer of distant light fields, something artificial and impossibly advanced, as though the cliffside itself had a brain and had decided now would be a dramatic time to alert him. Lysara's gaze followed the movement and a shadow passed over her expression. "They will come," she said, almost casually as if discussing the weather. "And when they do, you will not be alone." He attempted another joke, voice cracking slightly. "Great. I just got rescued from death and now I'm in a cosmic buddy cop story. Do I get a badge?" She didn't answer, only allowed the faintest curve of her lips, one that suggested amusement, approval, or some mixture of both. "For now, human," she said, standing and offering her hand. "Stand. Your life or new existence begins with steps, tiny ones at first." He took her hand, warmth spreading through his fingers in a way that contradicted everything he thought he knew about physics, biology, or common sense. He stumbled to his feet, wobbly but alive in a way that felt both miraculous and absurd, and for the first time since he had nearly died, he laughed. It came out ragged, half nervous, half relieved, echoing across the jagged rocks like the sound of a universe trying not to take itself too seriously. Above, the stars swirled in strange constellations, the sky alive with impossible geometry. Somewhere, far below, engines thrummed, lights blinked, and a story that had begun with the inevitability of death suddenly unfolded into something unrecognizable. Immortality, laughter, danger, and a vampire girl with long ears who could probably kill him if she wanted, but for now was teaching him to live. And he thought absurdly, as they began walking toward the shimmer of the distant lights, well, this day could have been worse. The first thing he noticed upon waking was that nothing ached. Not his ribs, not his knees, not even the faint lingering sting of a rock scrape across his temple. He flexed his fingers experimentally, then raised his arms and stretched, and the realization hit him with the subtle terror of discovering he could suddenly read minds. Though, to be fair, there weren't many minds to read in his immediate vicinity except Lysara's, which felt more like a constant, teasing hum than coherent thought. She was perched on a ledge, her long ears flicking at the movement of invisible signals, her silver eyes glinting like distant stars. "You move like a newborn," she said, and he tried to laugh, but it came out sounding more like a hiccup. "A newborn with the reflexes of a caffeinated squirrel," he added, because apparently making jokes was still possible, and he wasn't about to waste that privilege. Lysara's lips quirked. "You will learn quickly that survival requires grace, not commentary." He tilted his head. "Commentary counts as survival if it keeps your brain from melting down from boredom." She shook her head, and a small ripple of energy ran across her skin, like static electricity in a high-tech field. "Boredom may kill you faster than most things here," she said, and then crouched and touched his shoulder. "Come. There is much to see, much to understand, and some people or things do not take kindly to unprepared immortals." The terrain shifted beneath their feet, a landscape of jagged cliffs giving way to glimmering plains scattered with metallic growths that hummed faintly. He tried to make sense of it, squinting at structures that resembled crystalline towers but pulsed with internal light, almost breathing in rhythm with the wind. "Is all of this alive?" he asked. She chuckled lightly, a sound that made his chest tighten in the weirdest way, and nodded. "Everything has purpose, even rocks." He raised an eyebrow. "Even rocks, so that's why mine tried to kill me yesterday." She smirked. "Rocks have moods, be careful which you anger." As they walked, he realized he could hear things he never had before. The faint hum of hidden machinery beneath the plains, whispers of movement far beyond the horizon, and even subtle changes in the magnetic field, like the world itself was speaking directly to him. His attempts to comment on the oddity of it all were met with amused looks from Lysara, who seemed to find every expression of human bewilderment simultaneously endearing and frustrating. "So, let me get this straight," he said, sidestepping a strange tendril of metallic flora that shivered as they approached. "I'm immortal. I can feel the universe's weird noises, and my babysitter is a centuries-old vampire with ears that could probably hear my thoughts if I was thinking anything embarrassing." "Yes," she said calmly, but the twitch of her ears betrayed the amusement she was trying to hide. "And you will learn to adapt, quickly." He adapted, or at least he tried. His body healed from scratches instantly, his reflexes sharpened, and his senses were constantly bombarded with information. It was overwhelming, fascinating, and occasionally hilarious, because nothing about it came with instructions. He flinched when a tiny flying drone zoomed past his head, and realized he could track it midair with a clarity that made him feel like a superhero in a low-budget sci-fi flick. "I swear," he muttered, "I'm either about to save the galaxy or get vaporized, probably both." Lysara laughed softly. "Probably both," she agreed. They came to a valley where the air shimmered in waves, bending light like heat on asphalt but far more intense. Lysara motioned toward it. "This is the field of echoes," she said. "It records events, history, potential futures. Watch carefully." He squinted as patterns of light coalesced into shapes, some familiar, some bizarrely alien, showing moments he had no part in and others he would later recognize. "So basically a cosmic soap opera," he said. She blinked, silver eyes glinting. "Your humor will be necessary and possibly fatal if misused." They paused near a crystalline monolith that pulsed with a rhythm he instinctively understood. "You need to focus," she said, "or the field will overwhelm you." He tried to focus. His brain felt like it had been plugged into a hyperdrive, wires crossing and buzzing with new input. Then, almost instinctively, he tried to comment. "Well, at least it's prettier than accounting." The words slipped out, and Lysara tilted her head, letting the twitch of her ears and the faint curve of her lips tell him that, for the first time, he'd earned a small measure of approval. As the day wore on, they encountered other beings, some friendly, some indifferent, and one particularly aggressive cluster of bioengineered sentinels that seemed to be auditioning for a role in a galactic action scene. He panicked, tried to joke, and accidentally triggered a hidden energy pulse from his hands, knocking the machines into temporary disarray. "Accidental heroics," he muttered, dusting himself off, as Lysara's laughter echoed around him. "Not bad for a newborn immortal," she said. By the time night fell, the alien skies above were streaked with unfamiliar constellations, shimmering auroras, and the distant thrum of ships far above the surface. They set up a temporary camp, and for a moment, silence settled between them. He looked at her long ears twitching in the fading light, at the calm confidence she exuded despite centuries of experience, and he realized that the bond between them was complicated. Dangerous, perhaps, but also comforting in a way he couldn't yet name. "I don't even know what's coming next," he admitted, staring at the sky. "But at least I've got the weirdest, most sarcastic babysitter in the galaxy with me." She smirked, the kind of smirk that suggested she might enjoy correcting his sarcasm with lethal precision someday, but for now simply said, "And you will survive, human. Or at least I hope you will." He laughed softly. Immortal or not, with the universe suddenly open in all directions and Lysara beside him, it felt like the beginning of a story that could either end with laughter, chaos, or possibly both. And somehow, he thought, that was exactly how he wanted it. The alarm started softly, almost politely, like the universe was tapping its fingers before delivering bad news. He woke to a subtle vibration beneath his feet, the crystalline planes rippling in patterns he instinctively recognized as a warning. Lysara was already standing, her long ears twitching, silver eyes gleaming like liquid metal. "They've found us," she said, her tone casual, though the faint hum in the air suggested nothing casual about the approaching threat. He rolled out of the temporary shelter, stretching limbs that no longer ached, and muttered, "Great." Nothing like waking up to intergalactic doom with a side of existential dread. She tilted her head, twitching her ears, and the corner of her mouth lifted. You will learn, human, that humor may save you or get you vaporized first. The threat revealed itself gradually, a fleet of alien vessels cutting through the sky with the precision of hunting predators. They were not merely ships, they were living constructs, semi-organic, semi-mechanical, and entirely hostile, their movements synchronized like dancers performing a deadly ballet. Lysara stepped forward, and he noticed the faint ripple of energy surrounding her, subtle yet potent. We need to engage them carefully, she said, or I will be forced to explain why your immortality is limited in practical terms. He raised an eyebrow. Limited? I thought I was invincible. She smirked, ears flicking. Invincible, yes, impractical, certainly. They moved toward the edge of the field, where energy lines converged into glowing conduits, and he could feel the pulse of power thrumming beneath the surface. Lysara extended her hand, and the air seemed to hum around him. You must channel it, she instructed. Do not try to understand it all at once. Just react. He took a deep breath, feeling the currents of energy flow through him, the previously incomprehensible pulses translating into a rhythm his body instinctively understood. So basically, he said, I'm a cosmic drummer now. Fantastic. She didn't respond, though the flicker in her eyes suggested faint amusement. The first wave of constructs descended, sleek, angular, and lethal. He moved instinctively, energy radiating from his hands in arcs that disrupted their circuitry. Lysara moved beside him, her long ears twitching as she commanded threads of energy that intertwined with his own, a duet of power and precision. Watch your left, she warned. He ducked, narrowly avoiding a plasma spike, and quipped, left is always the dangerous side in every action movie ever. Good to know it applies universally. She laughed softly, a musical sound that seemed to infuse his movements with confidence. As the battle escalated, he realized how much he had changed. Fear no longer dominated his instincts. Curiosity and strategy guided him. He noticed patterns in the constructs, movements, anticipated attacks, and even improvised new combinations of energy manipulation. Lysara's eyes followed him constantly, occasionally offering subtle guidance, but mostly allowing him to explore his newfound abilities. You're improving, she said, though your jokes remain uniquely human. He grinned, dodging another strike. Someone's got to keep morale high. Amid the chaos, they uncovered the true purpose of the assault. A faction attempting to claim his immortality as a weapon, exploiting the prophecy that had bound him to Lysara's lineage. He felt the weight of centuries in that moment, the responsibility of power that could either protect worlds or annihilate them. Lysara's hand brushed his, grounding him. You are no longer merely human, she said softly. Your choices shape not just your fate, but ours. He nodded, feeling the full gravity of the bond between them, and for the first time understood the depth of loyalty, of trust, and of connection that transcended species and lifespans. The climax unfolded with a dazzling display of energy and strategy. He and Lysara synchronized their powers, weaving currents of alien energy with bursts of raw force. The constructs faltered, then collapsed, neutralized without unnecessary destruction. Exhausted but exhilarated, he fell to one knee, looking at Lysara, her long ears silhouetted against the alien sky. Well, he panted, that was less death and more extreme cardio. She laughed, the sound ringing clear, and helped him to his feet. You have grown, human, she said, not just in strength but in understanding. With the immediate threat neutralized, they turned their attention to the wider prophecy. They realized it was not a predetermined doom, but a test of choices, of adaptability, and of the bond between a human and an immortal alien. Together, they worked to untangle the ancient strings of fate, redirecting them toward stability rather than destruction. His laughter returned frequently, softening even the gravest moments. Turns out, Cosmic destiny is a lot less intimidating when you've got a sarcastic alien holding your hand, he said. Lysara's ears twitched, silver eyes glinting, and she replied, "Do not underestimate sarcasm. It is, after all, one of your greatest weapons." As the alien skies shifted into calm, the distant lights of ships and structures fading into the quiet hum of the planet, he felt a profound transformation within himself. Immortality was no longer a burden or a mere novelty. It was responsibility, curiosity, connection. He understood that his life, intertwined with Lysara's, was not just about survival, but about creating meaning in a vast, unpredictable universe. They walked together through the crystalline plains, side by side, occasionally teasing, occasionally serious, each moment a testament to the bond they had forged. Finally, they paused at the edge of a high ridge, looking out over the world below. He breathed in, savoring the quiet, the strange mix of alien beauty and residual energy from their battle. "So," he said lightly, "what now? More universe-saving adventures? Or just a long vacation with occasional existential crises?" Lysara's eyes sparkled with humor and warmth. "Now," she said, "we live, and perhaps for a time laugh at the absurdity of it all." He smiled, the first truly unburdened smile since his